Matlock in motion back to the left. Herbert rolling to the right, looking to the right, stops, has to reverse course, throws to the end zone, caught, touchdown! Chargers! Tre Harris! How about rewarding the young man who blocks his tail off on every rundown with his first touchdown of his career? Get that ball to the sideline. A beautiful play by Herbert, evades the rush, climbs the pocket, and throws a strike.
Oh, Tre Harris, the rookie. Great moment for the rookie in a night full of great moments for a lot of Chargers. That Tre Harris, as Jordan Rodriguez said, he's got some stuff to him. So does Matt Money Smith on KFI. So does Justin Herbert and this entire Chargers team on a Thursday night football game where they destroy the Minnesota Vikings 37-10. Shooky, this was a game of two teams who came in not feeling great. Fan bases very anxious. And one left looking like a team that I think eventually we will see in the playoffs. I know that's projecting far ahead. And another team that has a lot of problems. Let's start with the positive. What a night for Herbo Nation. Just a great night to watch the quarterback at his best.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I posted on social media, he's on another planet. It was right after that touchdown pass that we just played as the highlight there because, again, another example of how Prime Vision's the best way to watch football. When you watch it from that angle, you're like, wow, that's an incredible play because of the ground that he gains to step up and make that throw on the run. It was just a prime example of a great night in which he looked completely in control, felt very comfortable, and was willing to, improvise to make plays, to use his arm. But really, I got to give all the credit in the world, Gregg, to four things with this Chargers team. And that might sound crazy, but they all go in order. Number one, they got Joe Alt back, which was huge for their protection and their run game. Number two, they got creative with their run blocking, and they committed to what Greg Roman had done best in the past, which is loading up on the big uglies, the bigger guys in the 22 personnel, and relying on that to clear paths and also do it in a variety of different fashions. Matlock in motion, the fullback, offset eye, all sorts of different things. They were willing to get creative. Number three, the running game flourishing as a result. Kamani Vidal having a great day. And then fourth, and most importantly, all of that coming together to allow Justin Herbert to do everything that he does well, which is work out of play action, work on the run, use that cannon for an arm, find guys all over the field, outside early, middle of the field after that, going down the field for a touchdown drive, back outside later. Everything was working. And it all started with the return of Joe Alt. That's it. We're done. It's been a great week on NFL Daily. Shooky wrapped it up so succinctly. I'm serious. I mean, this was not a game where you could say, well, if this happened or that happened. You mentioned the running game. They finished with 419 yards overall, 207 on the ground, and then they hold the Vikings to 34 yards on the ground. It's just been the biggest weakness of this team, and it's been going back for a long time before Harbaugh was there. Since Harbaugh's been there, the running game has just not been consistent enough, and tonight they pushed the Vikings around. And last year, the run defense was more than good enough, but the last month they have been among, if not the worst run defenses in the league, and until late in this game, in a garbage time drive, they had actually held the Vikings to a 0% design success rate. So the return of Aaron Jones does not help out at all. But I want to go back to something you said. You mentioned 22 personnel. For the listeners out there, what does that mean? And what did you see when you saw that personnel? 2 tight ends, 2 backs. You're going heavy. You're absolutely stating that you want to run the football and you want to win up front. But the difference is, and Sam Schwartzstein from Prime Vision did a great job with this in explaining it. They weren't your typical 22. It wasn't, I don't know, Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland or, David Njoku and Harold Fannin. These are guys who are 300 plus pounds. One of them being played at tight end, another one at fullback, and Scott Matlock. They are absolutely coming out there and saying, we're going to run the football. We're going to run it down your throats. We're going to block it up well. And they did that repeatedly with the heavier personnel, which again, that balanced out the offense. I think at one point early in the fourth quarter, Sam came back on and he made another note, which I thought was extremely revelatory for how this game had unfolded. 2/3 of the Chargers' offensive plays had come out of run action, whether it was handoffs or it was play action. And it all started with them being able to establish the game on the ground early and keeping the Vikings defense honest. Because they tried. Flores tried. He brought blitzes early. The pick six that was the product of a blitz off the edge where Herbert tried to get the ball out hot and quick. But it didn't work ultimately because they committed, the Chargers did, to running the football and winning the battle of bulk up front.
It is a great point about the blitzes. They blitzed basically every snap on that first drive. And we'll get into the near pick six. But Herbert just showed that he was going to be able to solve it after that play. And he got hit 4 or 5 times on that first drive. And he just made it happen anyways. And at that point, it was kind of like, okay, we can't beat you that way. Can we just beat you straight up? And I think the answer for this pretty disappointing Vikings defense this year was no. They just don't have enough of a pass rush. I misspoke the other day when I mentioned Van Ginkel. He hasn't been around since week 3. Dallas Turner had a penalty tonight. He's made no impact this year. It's really Jonathan Gennard, and that's about it because they're not getting enough out of Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen. And what a great thing for Chargers fans to hear that, like the other team just didn't have like a pressure rate through the absolute roof. And actually, it was 38% tonight, but part of that is Herbert, holding the ball a little longer to make something happen, and part of that is for Herbert, that's nothing, and he ends up scrambling on a lot of those plays. I want to go back to what you said. There was a play early where it appeared that Herbert on the very first drive threw a pick six. Only 2 plays later, he hits a 3rd and 13 to Keenan Allen to keep that drive alive. And I thought that was such a fitting sequence. The Vikings have been on the bad end of a couple overturned passes lately. And then when they get some bad luck, like they can't recover from that. So they give up the 3rd and 13 to Keenan Allen, who's just been awesome this season, awesome the last couple of weeks, is going to be the all-time leading receiver in Chargers history, passing Antonio Gates at some point. If he can just stay healthy. And then later in that drive, it's a 3rd and 8 in the red zone. Again, 3rd and long. When you think the Vikings are going to finally get home, and they do not, Herbo makes them pay.
Herbert to throw, looking left, now middle, and caught, touchdown! Chargers! Oronde Gadsden got his first touchdown last week. Does not take long to get his second. If you thought it was a fluke, think again.
He dominated the first half of this game, Oronde Gadsden. This is real. 5 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown. I'm pretty sure that was all in the first half, Chuck. I don't know if he had a second half catch because Herbert didn't have to throw it. What have you seen? What do you like watching Gadsden out there?
It was him and Ladd McConkey each had matching stat lines of 5 catches for 77 yards by halftime. What have I seen from him? He's an athletic tight end. He's the son of another, former NFL player. And he's a guy who has steadily found a role in this offense. It really showed up as far back as a month ago. He had a breakout game last week against the Colts in a loss with 7 catches for 164. But what I saw in that sequence there, when you mentioned Keenan Allen and Oronde Gadsden, who I think is going to continue to be a part of their offense, so fantasy managers go pick him up if he's available, because Herbert obviously loves throwing the football, is as soon as he throws the near pick six to the outside on a play that Herbert had to get the ball out because there was pressure in his face, and he leaves it inside and it gets caught, overturned, they get a second chance. They immediately say, we're going to stop going outside the numbers. We're just going to feast in the middle of the field. And it's all because of Herbert being able to buy time. Now, on that touchdown pass, that's a simple read. And it's been a rough 5 days for Josh Metellus in coverage. But all it is dropping back, winning the inside leverage. He wins it. Herbert fires it in there. Dot for a touchdown. Gadsden's going to catch it. He's got pretty reliable hands for the most part. But it's the combination of the two, where they can just continually feast on the area in between the hashes, and it all comes back to Herbert being able to buy time, step up pocket, keep his eyes downfield, use that arm, find guys open, hit them accurately, and keep the chains moving. And I feel like we've been robbed of Herbert greatness over the last 3 to 4 weeks because they haven't had their offensive line, they haven't had their top 2 running backs, and all it took was to get one guy back, and suddenly they had that opportunity again. And it was such a beautiful thing to watch.
It really was, and yet they still had a bunch of injuries tonight. You mentioned Alt coming back. That was the key. I've been saying for the last month and a half, man, every win they can get without Alt, it's so big. It's almost it's almost like the Bengals trying to get as many wins as possible before Burrow comes back. Because it's not to that level, but we knew Alt was going to be back, and he ends up coming back a little sooner than first expected, and it was huge. I think it was even bigger. It's a tough call, but might be even bigger in the running game than he was in the passing game. You saw him blowing open a hole for Vidal on the early touchdown run that made it 14-0, where he just pushes one of the defensive tackles for the Vikings back into the end zone. He's awesome. He makes a big deal. And yet they still had a bunch of injuries tonight, just to list them up. Mekhi Becton left with a knee injury early. That's not great. Derwin James left with an injury early. Now, he was talking and laughing on the bench in the second half, even though he's in a sweatshirt. I'd take that as a relatively good sign, but obviously not good that he didn't play the rest of the game. Tony Jefferson, his backup was out. Tarheeb still, the cornerback, left. So these Thursday night games are brutal. The Vikings had a bunch of injuries as well. I just think Gadsden is a really smooth mover with and without the ball. He's only 250 pounds. He's not going to be Brock Bowers, but that's the mold of tight end that he is. And he is getting a ton of snaps. And even if he's not like a monster blocker, it gives you enough formational diversity when you have Keenan Allen out there, you have Tre Harris out there. Poor Quentin Johnston was a no-show tonight, but man, they just have a ton of options. It was such a blowout. Are you surprised, Shook, that it was that one-sided, and that, for instance, the EPA per play for the Chargers in the first half of this game was the highest of any offense in any game all season? What happened to the Vikings defense we love? Because there's just a lot of injuries. We'll get to them on the offensive side. They're relatively healthy. They got Blake Cashman back. Like, they're relatively healthy on defense.
Yeah, I was surprised because I thought the Vikings would cause more problems for the Chargers offense because we've seen nothing but problems for them since they lost Joe Alt, but they got him back, which made a big difference. And I was also surprised by not the lack of fight, but just it felt like the Vikings were always really close, and either they'd make a mistake or they'd commit a penalty or something would happen that would open the door for the Chargers to, continue to move the football down the field. And it just became so lopsided. I wasn't surprised by their offensive performance. We know what Carson Wentz is, who, by the way, was playing through a very obvious injury. And I hope that he doesn't have to continue to play with that injury. It was more the defense. It was more the defense. And Vikings fans aren't surprised, though. And I know they're not. And I know they'll get in the comments and say that because they've seen this happen for weeks. So guess what? I guess I'm in your company now. I just thought in this matchup, you might have, put up a better fight against the Chargers offense that has definitely had a bumpy road the last few weeks.
It's been a brutal couple of months for Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. Not just that Justin Jefferson confused him by pretending to be a team photographer in a show that my 10-year-old son loves. And I think it's probably the target audience. I don't know how many different shows Eli Manning can have where people just dress up. I'm just going to keep hitting this point. And it's just like an insane thing. He signs Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave in the offseason to beef up their defensive line. Just hasn't worked. They trade a number of picks to move up for Dallas Turner last year. This was supposed to be his breakout year, and since they haven't had Van Ginkel, they've needed him to step up. That hasn't happened. On the offensive line, they signed the two Colts offensive linemen. Will Fries is out there tonight, and he hasn't really been great this year. And Ryan Kelly's has concussion problems, or has an injury problem again, and that's something that carried over from the Colts last year. And then they've also just had bad luck, not just in terms of their acquisitions. It was a shocker. Brian O'Neill, their right tackle, didn't play tonight.
Right.
He was questionable on the injury report, but he played every snap last week, and he must have gutted through it because he was not available on the quick turnaround to play. So that's their right tackle. And then their left tackle, Christian Darrisaw, apparently was a game-time decision, worked out to prove that he could play before the game, and only lasted 9 snaps. If you had told me, and we knew going into it, that they weren't going to have their 2 starting tackles, it would have been more obvious that the Chargers were real favorites in this game, and that it was going to be very difficult for their offense to get anything done. And that's what happened. They made the Chargers pass rush look pretty good tonight.
Yeah, they did. And I did get a bit of a moment of bummer when I watched Odafe Owe get that sack on Carson Wentz, because he kind of delays a stunt and then twists back around toward the guard, and they pick up the stunt well on the inside between center and guard because the D tackle kind of crashes inside, and then Will Fries is late to pick it up, and Owe goes right around him and gets in there for the sack, and I'm just like, like it's just killing me, man. Like, why? You're supposed to be better than this. This is why they went and signed you. But again, you're right. Like, I wouldn't sound the alarms on the Vikings necessarily because they are missing so many guys. Oh, by the way, their quarterback hasn't played in a long time, and they seem to be playing it extremely cautiously. But I had this thought in the third quarter tonight where I'm like, man, the Vikings, they're one last minute drive of Carson Wentz leading them over the Browns from being 2-5 right now, which would be real concerning.
Right. I remember saying that day when we did the show, I was at that game thinking like this felt close to not a season-saving win, but if you look at their schedule, man, they really needed to get this one while they could. And it's come home to roost. They lose to the Eagles after they come home. They lose this game and they're not remotely competitive. And now the bad news starts. FTN Fantasy, a.k.a. Aaron Schatz, in his numbers, has them as the toughest remaining schedule in the entire NFL. They come back. They have Detroit. They have 5 division games left, including the Packers game is in the next few games. They have the Ravens, a couple other tough out-of-division games, and it's going to be a really difficult path back to the playoffs, and there is a path to this team bottoming out. I'm not saying that's going to happen. If you can get healthy, you get your tackles, J.J. McCarthy gives you something. I don't think this season is over, but I do think it is more likely than not they finish with a losing record this season, certainly. And there is a more likely chance, I think, they end up with like a top 8 to 10 pick than they do make the playoffs. And that is it's a big come down. And it's really going to be up to McCarthy of whether this season ends up feeling like a success. And they've treated him very carefully. And now it's going to be time to play. They've kind of telegraphed that they've been planning all along for him to return next week. I don't think it was exactly a soft benching, but if he was medically cleared to be the emergency quarterback, in theory, he could have been playing here. And I think they just wanted to get more time with him on the practice field and hope they could get a win along the way these last 2 weeks. And it just didn't happen. Carson Wentz wasn't great, but I don't know what you were expecting. You know what I mean? Considering the situation.
Yeah, once the situation worsened, once they lost Darisaw, it was like, oh, this is going to be bad. Now, Wentz, to his credit, threw a really beautiful touchdown pass in the back of the end zone. And he made a few nice throws like that. He did start to get into a bit of a rhythm with Justin Jefferson, but they had a lot of missed opportunities. Will Reichard missing that field goal at the end of the half by kicking part of the ground, and it comes up short on a 53-yarder, which was eye-opening to most everybody because he's got the leg for much more than that. It was just indicative of the small mistakes and the small misses that they had all night. And by the fourth quarter, you knew Wentz was playing very hurt. And he's the type of guy that he's going to hang on to the football.
I was like, does Kevin O'Connell not like Carson Wentz? Like, I thought he liked Carson Wentz. But I started to think, like, is he just out there like as like a human shield taking bullets?
That's kind of what he was doing.
He doesn't have to?
Yeah, that's
like
basically
put in Max Brosmer.
Yeah, they were like, all right, short week. We'll buy a little bit more time for JJ to get right? Like, and for those who are watching on YouTube, you'll see Wentz, gets a pass deflected. He knocks it down. He starts to grab his shoulder. I don't know what the injury is specifically, but I know that brace and I know that hold. And that is not a good feeling from my own experience. So credit to him for gutting it out. But it's tough for them when you look at their season outlook because they've played one division game so far. And they're in one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. With the rest of their schedule in the division awaiting them, by the way, next week they play the Lions in Detroit. It's going to be a really rough road, and that's going to be a tough situation to throw McCarthy back into because he's a de facto rookie at this point. Like he didn't play last year. He's only gotten a couple games worth of experience this season. It's going to be really tough for them. It's definitely, it's not impossible, but they got to get healthy. They already had their bye week in week 6. And the road is not going to get any easier by any stretch of the imagination going forward. So they're going to need a turnaround. They're going to need one pretty quickly.
They need Flores to cook up some magic because this defense is average this season at best. If you took out the numbers of one of the most dominant defensive performances of the year against the Bengals, they really are a below average defense. They have the pieces, and I thought the continuity potentially to be special this year. But defense and counting on defense year after year is tricky. Sometimes opponents catch up a little bit to your schemes, and Flores has been creative, but they haven't had enough one-on-one winners. You know who had some one-on-one winners tonight? The Chargers in their defense. And I've been killing Jesse Minter on the podcast the last month, so let's give a little love. Not only did they stop the run very well tonight, but some surprising names, got some production. Yeah, let's have a rare sack call on the TNF recap.
With 2 seconds, he takes the shotgun snap. Wentz hit, drop, sack. Well, to keep the theme going, choose your fighter. Is it a Boygby? Is it Thule? Is it Owe? Whatever it is, it's a loss of 8. I think it was a Boygby.
It was a Boygby who's making a name for himself. Justin Boygby with a couple sacks tonight, has had some pressures lately. They need some people to step up. I'm not going to say their defensive line problems are fixed, but they added a body in Owe who's solid at least. And they had 5 players tonight with multiple pressures, and they just are getting back to respectable. It was as good a matchup as you're going to get against these Vikings backups. So I'm not going to say that they've been crowned, but it was complimentary football. They need to be an offense-first team. So the Vikings need to be defense first. The Chargers need to be offense first, and their offense protected their defense tonight. I have a wild stat for you.
Okay.
Great call there by Matt Money Smith. At one point tonight, the Chargers had 21 first downs.
Oh, yes.
And the Vikings had 24 offensive plays.
Yep.
So because they came out of halftime after completely dominating the first half. It was crazy numbers. And then they came out of halftime and ran the ball down the Vikings' throats. They ended up settling for a field goal. But at that point, like, they just killed more time, put more points on the and it was one of the more one-sided games of the entire season. So shout out to the defensive line, to everyone, to complimentary football.
Yeah, time of possession difference was basically 2-1, 39:04 to 20:56. It felt kind of like that Chiefs-Raiders game on Sunday, in which the Raiders only had 30 offensive plays,
rough.
At least until garbage time. It's tough, man. It's what a turn for the Chargers. Like last week, you get dominated at home by the Colts, who are a well-oiled offensive machine, and then you do the same thing to the Vikings, which just underscores what I've said all along. We don't know what's coming in the NFL, and that's why it's so fun to watch.
Well, and that schedule explains so much. I really do believe, like, the Chargers could have come in, the Colts could have come in again this week. I think something similar would happen. The Chargers defense is not in that class.
No.
You know what? You get a little healthy, and you get some help from your offense, and you can outclass this Vikings offense. And suddenly, look, I don't think they're one of the best teams in the AFC, but they're 5-3. They're 3-0 in the division. They have the Titans next. They have then the Steelers and at Jacksonville before their bye, and then the Raiders. And like you look at that schedule. You're 5-3 now. If they're anything less than 8-4 after that stretch, I would think it'd be a disappointment. And you have your bye in there to get a little healthier too. So they're in a good position. And I say that because to me, Titans, Raiders, those should be 2 automatic wins. And then you split the others, in which you might even be favored. And we'll see. It's a long season. They're figuring it out, but they've maybe steadied the ship here. 2 more quick points before we go. Number 1, I like the Phillip Rivers, even the Rodney Harrison era Chargers uniforms tonight. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought that the Chargers are one of those unique franchises that they want to be powder blue and gold, but they also don't want to let go of their other shades of blue. Like they had that royal blue alternate before when Color Rush was first a thing. Then they
wear them off. Just don't wear the banana shirts anymore.
No, I like the banana shirts. Those are good too. I'm cool with that.
One.
I mean, when I played football as a kid, we had all yellow uniforms, and I love those too. But this was tasteful. This is a good way to modernize what they had then. They even went with the same font and art in the end zone that they used to have back at Qualcomm.
Yes.
Jack Robbie, back in the day, or Jack Murphy, stadium. And it was a great touch. I really liked it.
Great call in terms of the end zone. I love those teams. Harrison, I swear I'm not just saying this as a Patriots homer. I do think is one of the more underrated players and should be a more serious Hall of Fame consideration. But those teams with him and Seau and Quentin Jammer.
Yes, I'm so glad you said it, because if you didn't say it, I was going to say it.
fun defenses, and I love seeing that tonight. And then I hate talking about the refs, but that overturned pick six.
Awful.
What are we doing? The whole thing I hate, and I thought the Hawkinson overturn last week on the Vikings was also brutal. The whole thing that I think we've gotten away from is it's supposed to be clear and obvious if you're going to overturn it. Neither of those plays were clear and obvious. The only reason you even see the ball like moving a little bit is because you're slowing it down so much. But we live in a world where no one's going in that slow motion. So if it's just moving that little bit while you're actually moving, it is a catch. And it's definitely not clear and obvious. Both of those, especially the pick six.
No, I thought there was some slight room for them to maybe think about it, but I thought it was pretty firm that it was a pick six, which, by the way, talk about a way a play can change the tone of a game early on. You get that second chance to go down there and score. Yeah. It was terrible. I posted on social. I tweeted it immediately. I was like, that's a terrible review, because we don't need to over-legislate things like that. We're already obsessed with completing the process of the catch. That's a great play. There's no clear evidence that that he used the ground to aid him in catching that. I was stunned. Let's stop being so particular about these things.
Let's not be looking for reasons every time to overturn it.
Nitpicking.
You got to look for something that's just so clear and obvious. Going to keep using those words, and it just wasn't And I know that it would have been a different game. I choose to believe in a world where those Chargers fans, who were loud tonight, by the way, I know there were a lot of Vikings fans there and whatnot, but it was rocking. The Chargers fans loved it, like this team. I choose to believe in a world where if they were this dominant otherwise, they would have found their way to win. It might have been more entertaining for us along the way, a little more drama, but that, not every Thursday night game can be beautiful. Every Nick Shook performance can be beautiful, though. We will be talking to you on Sunday night. Take some time off. Hang out with the family. I don't know if you're working the next couple days.
Go see the niece and nephew this weekend. Why not?
We will be back in the feed. Yes, the pick show is already up if you haven't noticed. So the next time this feed will be active will be Sunday night. Me, Shooky, Patrick, Jordan, all your favorites. Good Sunday slate. We will see you for the Week 8 recap.